This is another study from the Barber Davis Center, which looked at 9 patients treated with central augmented pump therapy over a 3-month period of time, downloaded the pump, downloaded the sensor, and looked how often do children forget to bolus for that after-school snack. And if they forget to bolus for their after-school snack, what happens to the glucose levels before dinner? So first of all, if you don't bolus for your snack, your sugar is about twice as high before dinner than if you do bolus. Well, that's not a surprise. But what is the realistic occurrence of this behavior is half the time, over a 3-month period of time, half the time, teenagers do not bolus for their after-school snack. That's normal behavior, so we have to figure out a way to help teens remember the bolus. By the way, these studies are in teens, but these data apply across the entire lifespan. So 94 snacks had no insulin and 100 snacks had insulin. So it's a very common occurrence for people to forget their bolus. This is not just something in the United States. These are data from Sweden, which shows the same thing. Missing about 50% more of your boluses, which is about missing a bolus every other day. Your A1C is about 1% higher than if you don't miss your boluses. And interestingly, if you are missing bolus insulin, you also are checking your blood sugars less times per day than if you're not missing bolus insulin. Again, not a surprise, because if you check your blood sugars, you're more likely to bolus if you find a high. You check your blood sugars and you find a low, you obviously treat it right away. So I try to use the same analogy. If you check your sugars and you're low, do you wait 2 hours to treat the low? Of course you don't wait 2 hours. So if you check your blood sugar and you see a high, why not deal with it right away, just the same way you would deal with a low? Well, how common is it for patients to forget to check their blood sugars? And this is, again, data from the Type 1 exchange across the entire lifespan. And it's normal for everyone at some time or other to forget to take a bolus of insulin. You just want to reduce the occurrence of missed insulin boluses because of the impact they can have on overall glycemic control. Not a surprise again, the group that misses the most bolus doses are those teenagers and young adults, where 4 out of 10 patients are missing at least 1 bolus a week. And by the way, when this is self-reported data, we have to realize that the real data is likely even worse than this because there is social desirability to responses. And rather, when I'm seeing a patient family, I'd much rather know the reality than what the patient thinks I want to hear. Because we can do the best when we know what's really happening versus what you think we want to hear. Okay, one final study on bolus dosing. This is a study from Susanna Patton, published in the last year, 100 children ages 2 to 19, all treated with pump therapy. She created something called a Bolus score, which provided individuals with a single point for a breakfast, single point for a lunch, single point for a dinner bolus. So you get anywhere from 2 to 3 points a day if you took your bolus doses. How did bolus dosing relate to A1C? Well, you see that on the right side of the curve. Those who did not, had the lowest bolus score, had an A1C that was over 1% higher than those who had more consistent bolus dosing. We see the same thing again. Lower A1C with more blood glucose monitoring, and age was really not related across the entire age spectrum. So again, more boluses, lower A1C. So finally, I'm going to go into continuous glucose monitoring and how that can predict outcomes. One of the first studies published on continuous glucose monitoring was a study now called, published now 8 years ago in 2006. It was called the VAR control study, published in Europe. It included adults and pediatric patients. The black line refers to those patients randomized to use continuous glucose monitoring daily for 3 months. The dotted line, dashed line on top did not use continuous glucose monitoring, and the dotted line in the middle only used continuous glucose monitoring intermittently. So the more consistent CGM use, the lower the A1C. Well, I think you all know here about the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation Continuous Glucose Monitoring Study. I had the privilege to be the co-chair of the study along with Bill Tamberlane from Yale. This was the pinnacle study that demonstrated the benefit of continuous glucose monitoring on improving A1C. And more importantly, this was the study that provided insurance reimbursement for CGM across the country. What did this study show? The study showed that A1C fell 0.5% in those patients who were 25 years and older. And there were very modest differences in A1C among those children who were 8 to 14 and 15 to 24.